Today, we're going to get into the story of how modern multicultural Britain was formed. And it's a fascinating journey that's all about empire and open invitation and a big shift in the law. It actually spans centuries.
So, here it is, the big question. How did this island nation really transform into the diverse society we see today? You know, it's a complicated history, for sure, but the story has a really clear starting point.
And that story, it doesn't begin in the 1950s or 60s like you might think. Nope. To get it, you have to go way back, into the long shadow of the British Empire and the massive web of global connections it created.
I mean, just look at this timeline. The British Empire wasn't a short-term thing. We're talking centuries. It kicks off with colonization way back in the 16th century, explodes across Asia and the Caribbean, and hits its absolute peak of power in the 1800s. And then, in the 20th century, that massive empire starts to morph into what we now know as the Commonwealth.
But see, this was never just about controlling land on a map. The empire forged these deep, lasting connections, political, economic, and cultural. People living in the colonies were, legally speaking, subjects of the empire. And that one shared status, well, it created the very pathways that future generations would follow to Britain.
So, to really get what happens next, we have to talk about the Commonwealth. What is it? Well, it's basically the successor to the empire. It's a voluntary club of 56 countries, and yeah, most of them used to be colonies. But here's the crucial part. The UK is just one member among equals. This is the New World Order after the empire.
Okay, so that shared history totally set the stage for the next big moment in this story. After World War II left Britain devastated, the country was desperate to rebuild. And so it sent out a call for help. An invitation, really.
After the war, Britain had this huge problem on its hands, a massive shortage of workers. Its industries needed rebuilding, and brand new public services, like the National Health Service, desperately needed people to run them.
And that brings us right here to this one single pivotal year, 1948. This year is a huge symbolic turning point in the entire story.
In 1948, the famous ship, the Empire Windrush, pulled into port. It was carrying hundreds of workers from the Caribbean, answering that call to help rebuild Britain. This moment is so important because it really marks the start of large-scale migration from the Commonwealth. These people and their families didn't just visit, they settled and became a fundamental part of British life.
And here's the key thing you gotta understand. At that time, the law was really clear. If you were a citizen of the Commonwealth or a British colony, you had the legal right to just move to Britain, to settle down, to get a job. It was pretty much an open-door policy, and it was all rooted in that shared history of empire. But as you can probably guess, that was all about to change.
Right. Because that open door, it wasn't going to stay open for long. The rules were on the verge of a massive shift, kicking off a whole new era of immigration control.
Now, this change didn't just happen overnight. It was more like a gate slowly swinging shut. First, in 1962, an act came in that required work permits for the first time. Then, just a few years later, the 1968 Act made the rules even tighter. Now you needed to have a parent or grandparent born in the UK. And all of this led to the 1971 Act, which completely rewrote the rules on who belonged.
So that 1971 Act brought in this new kind of complicated legal idea called patriality. But what does it mean? Well, in simple terms, it meant the automatic right to live in the UK, what lawyers call the right of abode, was gone for most Commonwealth citizens. From now on, it was restricted only to people who had a direct family link to Britain.
Okay, so that's the history. But what does it all mean for the Britain we see around us today?
Here's where we get a really interesting, kind of ironic twist. As those rules started getting tighter and tighter, a lot of migrants who might have planned to go home one day, well, they decided to stay in Britain for good. So, in a strange way, the very laws that were meant to limit immigration actually ended up cementing the multicultural communities that were already here.
But that's not where the story ends. Starting in the 80s and continuing today, a whole different type of migration added new layers. This time, it was refugees and asylum seekers, people fleeing terrible conflicts in places like Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. This wasn't about empire, it was about global instability, and it added yet another dimension to the country's identity.
So, if you boil it all down,
The story of multicultural Britain is really a tale of two massive connected forces. On one hand, you have these deep, historic ties forged by an empire. And on the other, you have the constantly changing, shifting legal rules about who gets to come in and who belongs.
And all of this leaves us with one final big thought to chew on. What does it actually mean for a nation's past, its empire, its laws, its invitations, to live so powerfully, so visibly in its present? That right there is the legacy we've unpacked today. Thanks for watching The Explainer.